Good morning, everyone. You're listening to Turtle Island News with Tracey Kennedy. We've got a lot of news today, and I have to thank Wolf Spirit Radio and Revolution Radio Studio A. Good morning, everybody, and TurtleIslandNews.info for being with me today. You know, I've been thinking about some of the stuff going on right now, and I realize how wars start. Because, first of all, let's talk about me, because I am so pissed off right now. And you're probably thinking, what is pissing you off, Tracy? Well, I'm going to tell you. So, Two Dog and I, for a good 6 years now, at least. I think 6, anyway, we could say that easily, have been doing shows and telling people what's going on with the native peoples all over the world. Started some people off that are traveling all over the world doing this good work. So I get a call and an email today. Six Nations news site has decided they're the only people on this planet that can use Turtle Island News. So I'm thinking, you see, this is a direct example on how wars start. Because I was about to call somebody to go down there. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look in today to changing the name of our page, our webpage. It'll still be located at the exact same place, and I'll show everyone how to get there. But there's always people trying to do a good thing. I think we know that. As much as we're hearing horrible stuff, I am not going to go into the grief shaming that's going on right now, because we know what's behind these world attacks. And with the most outrageously, massively coordinated false flag ritual ever, we have so much going on this planet right now. Horrible things. Canadian mine industry right now is being destroyed by riots in Mozambique because we stole their land. And we are raping the shit out of it right now, as Canadian mine industry is doing. Now realize, and I've put some articles up on the page that you might find interesting today. We have a really good article sent to me by our wizard, the wizard on staff, 300 Spartans. We'll go in step by step, detail by detail, how this is such crap. But first, I want to take you back in time. February 15th, 1787. A young nurse at Lancashire cotton mill decided to scare one of her co-workers with a mouse. The prank actually made medical history. Terrified of the rodent, the woman, on receiving end, had a fit that lasted for hours. The next day, 3 more workers suffered violent fits. The next day after, 6 more. Alarmed, mystified at this epidemic, owners closed the mill amid rumors of a disease brought on by contaminated cotton. A Dr. William Sinclair arrived at Preston to investigate. He found 24 people affected. 3 worked at another factory 5 miles down the road. He ended the epidemic. It was merely nervous, easily cured, not induced by the cotton, he concluded. Suitably reassured, all recovered. No more workers fell ill. On a Wednesday, more than 2 centuries later, and 65 miles up the A59 from Lancashire, 40 pupils at the Outwood Academy in Ripon had treatment for dizziness and nausea after 4 fainted in an Armistice Day service. Fire brigade specialists dispatched to the incident found no signs of any hazardous materials, but the assembly hall was a little warm. A David Winspear of North Yorkshire Fire Service suspects that a handful of children fainted, with the rest developing symptoms driven by anxiety that rippled through the school. One student talked of a domino effect. Like Lancashire Mill incident, the events at Outwood Academy bear hallmarks of what was once called mass hysteria, but which is now called mass psychogenic illness, MPI, in case you're wondering. Doctors have recorded cases for hundreds of years, and fresh incidents crop up around the world almost any week throughout the year. Incredibly common, happens to completely normal people, said as Simon Winsley at the Institute of Psychiatry at King's College London, who wrote his first paper on the subject, 1987, gatherings on hot days of people who know each other well, marching bands, cheerleaders, school groups, particularly prone. It may be that someone faints or has a fit or medical incident, and what gets transmitted is anxiety. People get anxious because they don't quite know what it is. The thing about anxiety is that it gives you symptoms. You feel frightened, you shake, you get a dry mouth, you get butterflies in your stomach, you might get chest pain. The next thing you know, you're keeled over. Past cases of this MPI reveal women are more likely to be affected than men. It often starts with one individual. People are more affected if the first to fall is someone they know well, or if that person has a high status in a group. A spate of cases in the U.S. that we have talked about before have seen cheerleaders faint, send others quickly to the floor. Schools particularly vulnerable. One of the most potent environmental triggers is smell, so anxiety can be heightened if someone posts rumors of a gas leak on, say, Facebook, as happened during the Outwood Academy faintings. Remember that? Now, not all episodes of MPI are benign or easily resolved. Complex cases occur when stress builds up and becomes chronic in a population. In these instances, the effects can be explosive. In regions where people live in fear of being gassed or bombed with nerve agents, struck down by witchcraft, mass psychogenic events can occur. Hundreds, thousands, perhaps millions of people at a time. They can suffer muscular tics, twitching, shaking for weeks, even months. These things become huge when the rumor explanation is both dangerous and credible. Evidence is plentiful, from the West Bank to Kosovo to South Africa to Afghanistan. 2012, for instance, Takir province in Afghanistan was alerted to what was feared to be a mass poisoning of girls. At a school in the Talukan district, someone reported a smell. Then everyone got dizzy, nauseous, weak. Doctors found no organic cause. Who put it down to MPI? Said it was the fourth that happened in the same year, in the same place. The girls feared the Taliban would poison them. I know it sounds unrelated to what's going on, but bear with me. For all the doctors know about MPI, one big uncertainty is how to handle the aftermath. In June, later that year, Saudi authorities moved girls out of their school and into a building after fears of being haunted led them to suffer fits and convulsions. Bowing to parental pressure, did they solve this problem? 1999, school children in Belgium reported falling ill after drinking Coca-Cola. A company suspected MPI, diagnosis later confirmed, but recalled the product anyway, at a cost of $250 million for fear of losing market share. In Ripon, fire services, school authorities seem to have handled the event well. Mishandled an incident that could be brief, harmless, and which affects normal, healthy people can leave a small number with chronic illness. They will suffer from this for the rest of their life. A person who falls ill because of fear of an invisible gas, rather than from a direct exposure, is still ill. I am not fluffing this off. It's still an illness. But some who have their illness dismissed as all in the mind can struggle to rid themselves of symptoms. They might embrace explanations, suspect a cover-up, and faced with having to prove they are ill, fail to get well still. The challenge for emergency services, schools, public health officials is how to get the balance right. They must investigate gas leaks, hazardous chemicals need to be ruled out. But writing in the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine, a social scientist in New Zealand, it said that this must be done in an atmosphere that allows fear to subside, anxiety to dissipate. The job is much harder now than it was in the 1700s. Bringing calm to a school or a community or to the world is far more difficult, maybe impossible, because now social media can spread anxiety further than line of sight. Do you remember when a group of girls developed facial tics in a high school in New York, 2011? Some doctors wondered whether the bizarre movement might have been spread by YouTube videos that the victims had posted. And as soon as media coverage stopped, they immediately began to recover. We used to talk about witchcraft. Call in a priest to exorcise demons. A tough task. But now our task is much, much harder. You with me? Okay. In Canada, in the last couple days, a Muslim woman was attacked outside of her child's school in Toronto, had her burqa ripped off. was beaten. In Kitchener, Ontario, a Hindu temple had its window smashed by vandals yesterday. In Peterborough, there was a Sikh temple burnt to the ground. Now, people all over the world, and there are incidents like this all over the world, because of fear, because of terror. But please remember, and I know that the people listening to me already know this, it's why I wasn't going to go into this mess at all, because it seems obvious. But I told you in August that from September till January 2016, there will be escalating false flags. Now, North American Grid X3 exercise scheduled for the 18th to the 19th this month. Yes, there are things happening all over the world. Chemical spills, gas leaks, after a massive tornado in Texas. Texas is getting nailed by one thing after another. We're being told another massive meteor is heading towards Earth, probably the 20th. This global war on terror is a global war on you. Period. That's what it is. The cop who shot and killed a 7-year-old girl who was in her bed sleeping is already back to work. We have massive animal deaths. Again, all over this planet. Massive. So, I need to remind you of a couple more things. Netanyahu told France, you vote for the Palestinians to get their little strip of land. You will suffer the consequences. Just like when Canada got SARS, when we said we would not be joining the United States and their host of merry men in bombing Iraq, suddenly cured when we sent troops. France suddenly has sent people to bomb Syria into the Stone Age. It's already done. And yes, I do have links to Netanyahu's saying it would be a grave mistake. I know everyone has been telling you about these things, so I want to hit it in a little different way, because you're probably sick of it like I'm sick of it. We're talking about the 113 and the 144, this strike on Paris. And I have to remind you of something else. November 13th, 2001, President George W. Bush signed an executive order authorizing the creation of military tribunals for detention, the treatment and trial of certain non-citizens in war against terror. The order is one of the tactics taken by the U.S. government to combat terrorism as a result of the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon and other buildings that they've totally forgot about. Again, September 11th, 2001. I told you this year would echo important years. Did I not? But in that executive order, Bush finds, given the danger to to the security, the safety of the United States and the nature of international terrorism. And to the extent provided by and under this order, I find consistent with Section 836, Title 10, United States Code. That is not to apply in military concessions under this order, principles of law, and the rules of evidence generally recognized in the trial of criminal cases in the United States district courts. The President further found, having fully considered the magnitude of the potential deaths, injuries, property destruction that would result from potential acts of terrorism against the United States, and the probability that such acts will occur, I have determined that an extraordinary emergency exists for national defense purposes, that this emergency consists of an urgent and compelling government interest, and that issuance of this order is necessary to meet the emergency. The order then defines individuals subject to the order as follows: members of organizations such as Al-Qaeda, individuals who have engaged in, aided, or abetted acts of international terrorism, or individuals who have knowingly harbored such international terrorists. It goes on. The order was met with support, some criticism, but not much. Martial law is now under effect in France for 3 months. Idiots, and that's their official term, are now attacking Muslim people, or anyone who looks Arab, because the idiots who are doing this has no idea that Sikhs and Hindus are not Muslim, because they're idiots. And DARPA, the CIA, Facebook. This is about your brain being manipulated. And everyone who has posted their little flag needs to be on the lookout, because most people can't identify the ones that have posted that. They couldn't pick out France on a map. They have no idea what's going on, haven't looked into it, don't care to. But they have been triggered. This massively coordinated false flag anniversary ritual in Paris, connected to the 113 on the exact anniversary of the War on Terror. This is the infamous Ides of November. And massively coordinated being the key words, since, like 9/11, the only ones who had the type of access, funding, and means to pull this off are the controlling factors within France, United States, UK, Israeli government, mostly Polish, aka ISIS. So there's a far bigger tragedy than this event, and the 136 plus humans who were allegedly slaughtered. The fact that nearly 7 billion humans on this planet actually have a bunch of Toyota driving Islamic terrorists in the Syrian desert known as ISIS exist, or did it? Besides, has there been any real independent evidence confirming all or any of the events even happened as officials claim. Smoke and mirrors false flag hoax, which I told you to look for, with the usual crisis actors, the media accomplices reading the same script. Now, yes, I know that the media uses stock photos. It doesn't mean that person was there. Just like an image you can see from, I think I put it up Sunday on my page, of how they took a man who's Canadian, who is Sikh, so not Muslim, changed his clothes and said he was one of the bombers. He wasn't. Changed his clothes, put it up. Fake. That said, I have come to the other big question. Was there any specific, or anything specific, in the November forecast that might denote or point to November 13th as a key date for a major event connected to false flag terrorism? Well, aside from being the major anniversary of Bush signing the War on Terror, to further that question, if you've been around me for a while, you probably might remember what I've explained about the number sequence 113, or its mirror 311, and the standing connection to events revolving around major headlines of tragedy and disaster, generally involving false flag terrorism. That's why I call these false flag anniversary rituals. Why do I say it? It's because that's exactly what they all are. All of them. Events sanctioned, created, set up, and manipulated by the sick, psychopathic, skull and bone head mafia, the New World Order, controlling, manipulating our world right now, all up in your face, who are at a deeper level, are really just puppets themselves of a certain group, the Brotherhood. They work for these people. Their religion, at a fundamental level, is all based on ancient knowledge, technology, occult rituals involving human sacrifice to their deities, Isis, or the $, Osiris, Horus, which predate those of any Greco-Roman Empire. Now, so hidden occult connections to this tragedy, especially in context of the 113, can't be more clear, at least to those who remember what I've been trying to explain for the last 3 years. But 113 being the number of tragedy, its origin, and the level this group will go to frighten you and keep you afraid and keep you hating. And obviously that's worked for some. It has, because they're attacking women walking their kids home from school. Tragedy hit Argentina at and on 113. It's even important to realize these things happen to the minute, over and over and over again. I know the stuff that I talk about may seem bizarre. You want to hear about the events? Look at the events. Ides of November. Well, because there's one more little prophetic connection in this month's forecast that I can actually put in plain sight. Allegorical, perhaps, reference to the more important date of November. Context, ancient Rome, their calendar, which was made up. And the biggest or most important date in November associated with sacrifice and even Islam, which we can go into. Do you know the Latin name of the 9th month? November. The Ides of November. Can be chilly. Ancient Rome, their religion. The festival of Epulum Jovis, celebrated on the 13th of November in honor of Jupiter. The 13th or 15th days of every month are known as the Ides and are sacred to Jupiter. It's old Roman tradition dating back to the lunar calendar, where they would fall on a full moon. The Ides of November has a special meaning, being one of two the feasts of Jupiter, and their traditional date, a sheep is sacrificed to mark this date. November 4th to the 17th, Pleiadian Games to honor Jupiter. The 13th was the great festival day, high point of the games. How are the masses viewed by the New World Order? Sheep, cattle. How many sheep were allegedly slaughtered on this Ides of November? It's insignificant compared to how many they've already slaughtered, and all those they're preparing to slaughter using the same simple mind control technique. And it is pretty simple. Why is it so important for you to understand the subject of the Hegelian dialectic? Because it is the process by which all change is accomplished in society today. More importantly, it is a tool of the globalists that they are using to manipulate the minds of the average American, the average person on this planet, to accept that change where they ordinarily would refuse it morally, physically, emotionally. We know better. Problem is created. Anticipating in advance the reaction the population will have during a given crisis, because they are testing you. We've told you this. They are testing you over and over and over again. The key word in November forecast might be in plain sight, uniquely connected to the Roman calendar, which contains only one date, and it connected to spectacles and theaters of sacrifice. Look at the title of the forecast. Look at how we spell it. November throughout. Act 1, Part 1, Scene 1, Part 2, Act 2, Scene 2, Rant. Over and over again, the exact same thing being played in front of your face. Of course, it's a false flag. jihad, Islam, please. In my opinion, what may be the most important question: who really should blame people or hold responsible for attacks, whatever fallout or resulting effects occur, not to mention all the future attacks this group named ISIS is planning, which anyone with 1 ounce of common sense and intelligence that's done their due diligence knows it's nothing more than a fictional name to hide the real terrorists. The French, the US, the UK, and the Israeli government. Isn't the answer the people themselves? Because in this age of information, ignorance is now a choice, which is exactly what the occult group thrives on and uses to get away with their crimes over and over and over again. Yet here we are, once again, watching the same 9/11 script play out with billions of ignorant sheeple standing in mourning lines, chowing down on the same media lies, the same propaganda, while the real terrorists in sheep's clothing are leading you. Prepare for a new war on terror that intelligent humans know can never be won and will only lead to one more time. So who's more insane, the one leading or the one following? Seems the people haven't learned their lesson, even after almost 15 years of non-stop violence. And years of evidence proving 14 cave-dwelling Muslims with box cutters had absolutely nothing to do with the last attack blamed on Islamic terrorists. With that said, there's only one thing left to say. The sheeples always deserve what they will tolerate. The CIA, through its sword of justice, has put us in a situation because of our hearts. We are not these demonic entities. We can never be. Our hearts open. We hear someone hurt and we feel it. We do. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. You know, some laugh when I talk about this mind manipulation, this possession that most are experiencing, heavily poisoned, heavily used by the CIA, DARPA, Facebook. Who told you it was a social experiment and you still believe what you read? Let's talk about the goo. Goo is made by putting a venomous snake in a bottle with a scorpion and a centipede. And the one living has the strongest poison. They fight to the death in this bottle. Goo is a manifestation of evil that appears worldwide and in a wide variety of toxic worms and insects. These two are put into this vessel where they naturally become one another's prey. Gu is actually short for an ancient Chinese symbol for an extreme pathogen, yin, the dark side of life. What we are experiencing is a massive wave of dark energy. This does not have to be a bad thing. It's one of the things that the CERN has unlocked. This is not bad. We come from the darkness. We don't have to be afraid of kings. They wear crowns. Do you know what that means? You wear a crown. What happens when you are born? The woman crowns. That's all that word means. Look at your computer. There's a master and a slave drive. Both of those drives are exactly the same. Name alone changes them, but they are the same. The worst nightmare of any human is what we've been told is the darkness, the rottenness, the slithering vermin, the poisonous snakes, the betrayal, the black magic, the pain, the insanity. Gu, hexagram 18, is entitled Gu, for dark yin poison. Classical comments from Chinese medicine experts have remarked that this particular hexagram describes an energetic situation. Feeling me? Where a feeble wind cannot penetrate the dense area at the mountain's base. That's your feet. Creating a Gu syndrome that does not receive air and thus becomes decayed and rotten according to the movement. This is what they make the demonic Gu poison. This is an old poison. Based in Chinese medicine, this is a new poison being used and laid at your feet. Now, according to Chinese medicine, one of the most effective cures raw purple garlic. Strong. Nasty. Something equally strong. I am trying to be equally strong. Not hurt. Not make you feel bad for you feeling bad. Empathy is the one thing that might save us. Because, even with the people that are reacting violently to this, and the government sending more of our young men and women to die for this, the poison I'm giving you will cure you. Also focusing, now this is back to ancient Chinese, focusing on your breathing in your abdomen, your belly, when you breathe in and out, visualizing lightning and thunder under your stomach, and it penetrates the darkest areas. Light up the darkness, because this is where the Gu parasites and the flukes hide, and they try to regenerate. That's why they keep doing the same things over and over and over. Lightning and thunder are the yang energy of the earth. The Gu is the bad part of the dark matter, but it's still Mat, who is also mother. That which tries to hide from the light as well. The negative energy of the Jinn. Yin. Sorry. Thinking a bunch of things in my head. Now, the Chinese folklore, a Gu spirit transforms into various animals. Sometimes a being, but typically a worm or caterpillar or snake or a frog or a dog or a pig. This is where I was thinking Jinn here. Black magic practice, such as manipulating energies, especially sexual ones, which unfortunately our men beautiful as they are, they are being pushed towards an idea so that they will react badly, feeling they are defending, feeling that they are defending all of us. I don't blame people for being stupid. You can't. I realize the mind control going on, and it's deep, and most people are unaware, and they sit by their TV and don't realize that they're rocking back and forth and drooling out of the side of their mouth a little bit. This goo was typically used by the Wu, still used by the Freemasonic pedophiles, CIA, satanic occultists, to kill innocent people and to make it look natural, to commit rape, typically whatever they do to gain control over victims' body, mind, and soul. Gu, the symbol, can be traced back to oracle bones until modern times, and has acquired a large number of meanings, connotations. Before discussing this, Chiyu, it is necessary to introduce a related word, Chong, W-U-G, Wug, Chong, or originally snake, worm, same pictograph, insect, bug, pest, worm, spider, amphibian, reptile, dragon, etc., denotes a Chinese folk taxidermy lacking any adequate English translation. So many translate Chong as Wug, a word kind of between worm and bug, or worm. It's together, kind of the same thing. It bridges a gap linguistically. A class of animals that are repugnant to you. Small reptiles, amphibians. Maybe not you particularly, but you know what I mean. But the script for Gu is poison, berich. An ancient script for Gu, again, still means poison or to bewitch. The traditional Chinese character, simplified new character, means demonic poison or wugs inside of a container, a jar, a cup, a utensil. Early writings of this range from different oracle bone scripts to seal script characters. The oracle characters, one or two wug elements. There could be a Wu, but never one Wug. It's funny. You'll laugh. The oracle bone inscriptions list 23 occurrences of Gu, written with 2 Wugs and one with 4 and 1. The Gu is always multiple characters, different kinds of bugs. It's how many bugs they've stuffed in the bottle to eat each other, see which one comes out, and that's the one they use. Probably thinking, yeah, but so what, Tracey? They are using these ancient things against you like they always have. Diseases of this kind, even if you survive it, infect you forever. It's interesting, that there are so many different meanings for this goo. Poisoning from an abdominal wug. Ancient texts, a type of artificially cultured poisonous wug who became a new thing after eating so many other poisonous things. A ghost of a person. Someone convicted of goo medicine, whose severed head was impaled on a stake and later put into a jar. An evil heat, a noxious chi that harms humans, a wug pest that eats grain. Interesting. Sorcery that harms humans, to seduce, to tempt, to confuse, to mislead, an affair, an assignment. One of the 64 hexagrams, it is formed from Jen, which means mountain, and Xun, which means wind. Looking at the ancient history of this, it records 4 different goo meanings. A grain that molders, insanity, delusion and disorder, a league of beings, entities, closest. Now there was a Marquis of Jinn who asked the help of a doctor named Quinn. Not even trying to rhyme. That's really his name. And an Earl sent to sea for a disease that cannot be cured because of fear. Now, according to the saying that when women are approached, the chamber disease becomes insanity if women get it. And it is caused by neither spirits nor by food. It is a delusion that has destroyed your mind. Even the one ministering to you will die. It will not be the will of heaven to preserve you. Many women will be approached by this. People contain this infection forever. Some by will, and some by the contagion of it. Have you noticed that? People pick up this flag and start running with it. And the stories get deeper and worse. Sorcery then. Sorcery that harms humans. Something that casts damaging spells. Once you get up and stretch your legs a little bit. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Turtle Island News, soon to be changed to Trace Elements, with Tracy, your hostess today. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Again, thank you, Revolution Radio, Studio A, Turtle Island News, Will Spirit Radio, and whoever else may be simulcasting me right now. So, world leaders warn it has begun. Welcome to World War III. Where in the hell have they been? Because from Pol Pot to ISIS, the blood has never died. In transmitting Nixon's orders for massive bombing of Cambodia, 1969, Kissinger said, anything that flies, everything that moves. As Barack wages his 7th war against the Muslim world since he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, remember that? And Francois Hollande promises a merciless attack on that ruined country. The orchestrated hysteria and the lies make one nostalgic for Kissinger's murderous honesty. Listening to people who have been witness to human consequences of aerial savagery, including beheading of victims, their parts festooning on trees and fields. I'm not surprised by the disregard of memory and history yet again. Telling example is the rise of Pol Pot and his Khmer Rouge, who had much in common with today's Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. They too were ruthless, and they began as a small sect. They too, product of an American-made apocalypse, that time in Asia. Now, according to Pol Pot, his movement had consisted of fewer than 5,000 poorly armed guerrillas uncertain of their strategy, their tactics, their loyalties, their leaders. Once Nixon and Kissinger's B-52 bombers had gone to work as part of Operation Menu, the West's ultimate demon could not believe his luck. The Americans dropped the equivalent of 5 Hiroshimas on a rural Cambodia between 69 and 73. They leveled village after village, turning to bomb the rubble and the corpses. The craters left giant necklaces of carnage, still visible from the air today. Terror was unimaginable. A former Khmer Rouge official described how the survivors froze up and they would wander around mute for 3 or 4 days, terrified, half crazy. People were ready to believe anything that they were told. This is what made it so easy for the Khmer Rouge to win people over. A Finnish government commission of inquiry estimated 600,000 Cambodians died in the ensuing civil war and described the bombing as the first stage in a decade of genocide. What Nixon and Kissinger began, Pol Pot, their beneficiary, completed. Under their bombs, Khmer Rouge grew to a formidable 200,000. ISIS, similar past, similar present. By most scholarship measure, Bush and Blair's invasion of Iraq 2003 led to the deaths of at least 700,000 people in a country that had no history of jihadism. The Kurds had done territorial and political deals. The Sunni and the Shia had class and sectarian differences, but they were at peace. Intermarriage was common. 3 years before the invasion, driving the length of Iraq, you could do it without fear. People were proud. Above all, they thought of themselves as Iraqis, heirs of a civilization that seemed, for them, a presence. Bush and Blair blew all this to bits. Iraq is now a nest of jihadism. Al-Qaeda, like Pol Pot's jihadists, seized the opportunity provided by the onslaught of shock and awe, or the goddess Shekinah, and the civil war that followed. Rebel Syria offered even greater rewards, with CIA and Gulf state rat lines of weapons, logistics, money running through Turkey. The arrival of foreign recruits, inevitable. A former British ambassador, Oliver Miles, wrote, "The Cameron government seems to be following the example of the Tony Blair, who ignored consistent advice from the Foreign Office, MI5, MI6, that our Middle East policy, and in particular Middle East wars, had been a principal driver in the recruitment of Muslims in Britain for terrorism here. Do you think? I watched, what's that monkey movie? The ones about the great apes. Return to the Planet of the Apes. See how all wars start, and how we are traumatized people getting a chance to fight back. In those senses, there were apes or gorillas, but still, it's very easy to recruit traumatized people, and we have been trauma bonded over and over and over again. ISIS is the direct progeny of Washington, London, and Paris, who, in conspiring to destroy Iraq, Syria, Libya, all of Africa, committed an epic crime against humanity, like Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. ISIS are the mutations of a Western state terror dispensed by banal imperial elite. Undeterred by any kind of consequences of actions taken at a great remove in distance and in culture, their capability is unmentionable in our societies, making accomplices of those who suppress critical truth. It is 23 years since a Holocaust enveloped Iraq, immediately after the first Gulf War, when the U.S. and British hijacked the United Nations Security Council, imposed punitive sanctions on the Iraqi population, ironically reinforcing the domestic authority of Saddam Hussein. It was a medieval siege. Almost everything that sustained a modern state was, in the jargon, blocked. From chlorine for making water, supply safe, to school pencils, parts for x-ray machines, common painkillers, drugs to combat previously unknown cancers, carried in the dust from the southern battlefield that contaminated with depleted uranium. Just before Christmas 1999, the Department of Trade and Industry in London restricted the export of vaccines meant to protect Iraqi children against diphtheria, yellow fever. Kim Howells, Parliamentary Undersecretary of State in the Blair government, explained why. The children's vaccines, he said, were capable of being used as weapons of mass destruction. The British government could get away with such an outrage because the media reporting of Iraq, much of it manipulated by Foreign Office, blames Saddam Hussein for everything. Under a bogus humanitarian oil for food program, $100 was allotted for each Iraqi to live on for a year. This figure had to pay for an entire society's infrastructure, essential services such as power, water. Imagine the UN Assistant Secretary General Hans von Sponeck said setting that pittance against the lack of clean water and the fact that the majority of sick people cannot afford treatment and the sheer trauma of getting from day to day, and you glimpse a small glimpse of the nightmare. Make no mistake, this is deliberate. I have not in the past used the word genocide for this, but it is. To implement a policy that satisfies the definition of genocide, a deliberate policy that has effectively killed over 1 million individuals, children, adults. A study by the United Nations Child Fund, UNICEF, found that between 1991 and 1998, the height of the blockade, there were what they called 500,000 excess deaths of Iraqi children under the age of 5. American TV reporter put this to Madeleine Albright, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, asking her, is that price worth it? She said, we think the price is worth it. They think the price is worth it. And not just Paris. Why is Beirut's brutal terrorism attack being ignored? I'm left wondering how people are still so easily manipulated. Seriously. The Alliance's holy war against the Islamic State, NATO's role in the recruitment of terrorists. Do you wonder how terrorists are made? Do you? With Putin being the voice of reason through all this, naming and shaming Obama, we need to look at the roots of terror. It is imperial overdrive for power and control that we are watching. It is not new, did not start with Paris, and I am sickened to hear and watch the events as they are occurring all over this world, especially Africa. It is our history that we in the West think we have some sort of moral superiority and technical advantage, for which we in the Western world, the civilized world, perceives ourselves as being superior. Well, look at us, living lifestyles of comparative wealth, luxury to much of this world, because much of this world is already living in the apocalypse. It's not coming, it is here. Compared to that, of course, we're superior. What is not contained within that narrative is that our wealth has much more to do with the imperial conquest by European West of various regions in order to extract their wealth of whatever sort. Moral superiority is nothing more than a gloss of rhetoric over the motivation to use superior military technology to subdue, to conquer, to extract wealth from other regions and other peoples. In short, the roots of terror lie within our own hands. Certainly other civilizations of past years have done the same, with their own versions of moral superiority, technical advantages. The only underlines the idea that this is a human condition, with the current version apparently much more deadly than previous iterations of our collective and unrecognized heart of darkness. This is the darkness. So wherein, then, do the roots of terror lie? Historically apart from within ourselves, generally. One could trace the roots of terror back to the beginning of the history they tell us, and then probably beyond into prehistory. As we are supposedly a morally, a superior society today, the roots of today's terror can all be traced back to World War I. Its imperial atrocities on all sides, followed by the demise of the Ottoman Empire. Before then, of course, is the whole colonial history concerning the conquest of this planet, the Americas, the subjugation of all indigenous populations. Societies then, almost wholly European, used the exact same old tactics of arguing some sort of moral superiority while utilizing brutal technologies to subjugate and destroy native people. It's why I see white people in the attacks in France. Now, that doesn't mean they're not Muslim. You look at Bosnia, you're going to see white people, blonde, blue-eyed Muslims. Could some of them be Muslim? Yes. Were they? Probably not. Africa dealt the same deal. And while indigenous populations were not completely obliterated, the slavery, resource extraction still ongoing, control of physical land converted and covered the entire continent. Most parts of Asia, whether in British or in South Asia, or France and South Asia, with the Portuguese and Dutch scattered throughout everywhere, underwent a similar colonial pattern. And that's not to say this disease didn't hit Europe, because it hit you first. I see that. But World War I, as we've talked about before, and the spread of this Praetorian school system and then doctorates and all that crap. World War I, effectively a clash of empires, trying to supersede the control of other empires for wealth and power of the rest of the world. From that war rose the divisions in the Middle East by the British and the French into outright control or spheres of influence, ranging from Sykes-Picot secret agreement throughout the League of Nations mandates, the Versailles Peace. While it worked for some, failed miserably for others, not meeting the ideas of any Wilsonian rhetoric about all nationalities deciding their own futures democratically. Brought to you by the letters B and S and the number 33. Now, because of that failure, World War II, the largest battle of the world, witnessed again a change of the imperial overlords, nothing else. Politically, financially, economically, the U.S. became dominant power control of Europe through NATO, using a combination of military and financial tactics to try and gain control of the rest who were not willing to submit to U.S. dominance. The readings of history are widely available, various interpretations, with the general trend of one being an artificial moral superiority, combined with powerful economic forces. Bretton Woods, World Bank, IMF, WTO, OECD, etc., and on, all sustained through covert and overt military actions and false flags. This is a unipolar empire. The collapse of the Soviet Union is probably the most current historical turning point. It left the U.S. and its partners as heir apparent to the global hegemony. A global peace would surely ensue. It was the end of history. Unfortunately, those same imperial imperatives from centuries past survived, thrived, and what was supposed to become the New World Order, it played out militarily through the designs of the grand chessboard, rather than through the logic of an orderly trade, cultural interaction, searching for a better understanding of each other's culture, and arguably 9/11 attacks on the WTC could be labeled as more infection or an inflection point of history. But it is more readily seen as a culmination of blowback from actions taken by this global imperial hegemony. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the incident released powerful forces, already prepared, ready to be set in motion. It was the new Pearl Harbor, designed by the authors of the Project for a New America, or a New American Century. Roosevelt, Bolton, Pearl, Feast, Kagan, Crystal, Woosley, who had been around since Reagan's tenure. It allowed the rapid passing of a Homeland Security Act, one so large it had to be, by necessity, ready to go for the framework. It was prepared. It couldn't have happened in a day. It ramped up the rogue nature of the U.S. military and corporate actions globally with their infamous with us or against us paradigm, turned everything black and white, losing all perspectives of gray or color. The ultimate goal? Global hegemony, the containment or the destruction of both Russia and China, the unparalleled support of Israel, the demonization of all things Islamic. It applied ruthlessly through all means of military operations, through the manipulation of internal standards, so-called right to protect doctrine, those ideas, through the manipulation of financial markets, and last but not least, the outright control of all media mainstream and its acquiescence, indeed promotion, of the new imperial rhetoric. Fortunately, we are at an inflection point once again. Not fortunate for those in the depth of its current and violence. Fortunate in that the rest of the world has acted against the imperial overdrive of the U.S. and its imperial cohorts. Yes, the attacks in Paris were brutal, vicious, intended to frighten you, to terrorize you even more, to traumatize you even more, to get you to put on your little freak flag, Facebook. But what of the terror that has been instigated in the name of the empire? The empire in which you and I live? It is less of a terror tactic to bomb cities, villages, countrysides, indiscriminately as in the Vietnam War. Are we more civilized now that we can pretend to use smart weapons? Is it shock and awe? A feature of technical morality, making us superior to the thousands being killed daily, with millions more affected by, well, in the subsequent years, is the use of Hyperbaric bombs, cluster munitions, white phosphorus, depleted uranium munitions, hellfire missiles, dense inert metal explosives, all used in these new civilized Western powers in the wars of the Middle East and beyond. Is that being more civilized? Is the control and manipulation of the financial world a morally justifiable act? Are free trade agreements anything but free when they subjugate the junior partners, both financially, legislatively, in legal terms, but essentially destroy anything close to sovereignty? Is our lifestyle predicted on consumption, living within a retailer, extractive economy, so living in debt basically, buying cheap resources and goods from countries subject to financial and military imperial overdrive? Is that how we rationalize our moral superiority? This is understood by some in the world right now. It is seldom, if ever, recognized within the mainstream media, except for the odd occasion when a balanced report accidentally slips through or is made on a situation in which there is no balance. What is being recognized slowly, without huge rhetorical counteraction, is that there is, fortunately, no longer a global or a single global hegemon, even as they remain desirous to attempt it. Putin asked the UN, "Do you know what you have done?" They created an empire of chaos that serves certain sectors well, but for most part to a level of violence not witnessed for several generations that could, if the right-wing rhetoric and bluster of the U.S. presidential candidates holds any meaning, could lead to the end of the world as we know it. Freedom fighters of Reagan have morphed through the Taliban to Al-Qaeda into the current ISIS iteration. These groups have always been supported by the U.S. Certainly, the Mujahideen, from which the Taliban, less so-called Al-Qaeda, other than as a useful other, as an exercise to combat on a global scale, yet supported by the long allies, the medieval tribal monarchy of the Saudis and their black oil, as it has been extrapolated from current actions against ISIS, who have proven to be convenient destabilizers against Assad, receiving U.S. military aid indirectly through Turkey, Saudi Arabia, other partners, the usual suspects. As for France, willing partner in most, if not all, of these imperial endeavors. Asymmetric warfare has brought these endeavors to the homeland. France could have imposed martial law, locked down the country, as more likely would happen in the United States, and looks like has happened, but kind of quieter. If Canada, well, in Canada, the response so far has been measured, compassionate, decided change from what would have happened if Harper was still in power, able to ramp up on his terrorist fear factor. Fortunately, humanity also carries within itself an altruistic caring capacity towards others, empathy. They haven't killed it yet. Just as the roots of terror lie within our own hands, so do the roots of real altruistic humanitarian outlooks. That includes all humanity, indeed all of the global environment, and if nourished properly can result in an eventual reset to something more compassionate, maybe even caring. That's still possible. I expect no miracles, as the hatreds have been developed by the control of the commons politically, financially, militarily, presented with the subservient media. It's not going to be easy to overcome this. What needs to be recognized is that we are all complicit, partly through the acceptance of our lifestyles and what it is truly based on. As individuals, sometimes not much can be achieved, but it becomes an individual responsibility to question authority, to question the raison d'etre of our moral judgments, to be prepared to do our own searching for the truth, however painful that truth may be. Civilians in Paris may have been killed because of these imperial drives for power. Not just tens, hundreds of millions before them have been killed in the past. The human condition, its extremes of pathos and joy, requires a understanding of global responsibility towards each other and every other that exists. Take personal responsibility, think globally, act locally, towards an era that perhaps the world will be at peace with one another. I know it sounds impossible. But we could choose not to allow this Paris false flag operation to be a pretext for war and more racism. Because haven't we had enough of that? How many children have to die? Right now, going global. Republicans are urging France to invoke Article 5 of the NATO treaty. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. Who is us? It's not me. It's not you. It really isn't. It's just not about you. And it's never really been about you. If you're listening to me, and as much as I talk about the people that are listening, if I was important to them, I would never have gotten on air. And I wouldn't. It's simple. This would not have happened. I would not be talking to you. I wouldn't. They wouldn't mess with my internet connection. They would stop me from talking, plain and simple. Even if I was one of the big radio hosts with hundreds of thousands of daily listeners, you don't matter, because you're still talking. So crisis, manufactured. As reported by Der Spiegel, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has accused billionaire George Soros of using his open society network to destabilize Europe by funding and encouraging an invasion of Islamic migrants into Europe, saying this invasion is driven on one hand by people smugglers, on the other hand, by those activists who support everything that weakens the nation state. This is the Western mindset. And this activist network is perhaps the best represented by Soros himself. Hungarians have been the loudest to complain. They have closed their borders to refugees. They don't want any resettlement in Hungary because they fear they will be Muslimized. Do you know how many Muslims are in Hungary already? In fact, there are reports of rapes by Muslim men. We are only shown pictures of men, groups of men, young men, some in Germany, elsewhere, as well, that treat the Muslims as a threat. They feel compelled to abide by Sharia law, not the laws of each individual nation state. Part of the problem with the European Union is their open border policy. The respect they supposedly have to show for other people's religion. This is certainly going to increase crime in Europe, and the Europeans are going to have a hard time dealing with it. Germans will ultimately take 1 million, the French will take 1 million. However, the numbers that they're taking are tiny compared to the total population of the countries. For example, Germany's population is about 80 million. So the way this will get financed is that the Europeans will simply have to increase their budget deficits. Since they have abandoned the previously agreed on policy to reach a balanced budget, they will deficit finance the additional financial costs. The Europeans, particularly Germans, look at this as a potential boom because they need more unskilled workers, which is what the German economy needs. With regard to Soros' promotion of mass migration into Europe, he has an economic reason to weaken the European countries. Why? Because he's short everything European. And if you're short everything like he is, short European equities, short European bonds, then obviously you have an economic interest to weaken those countries. It's not a conspiracy, it's just a business tactic. It is what anyone would do who has a vested economy and economic interest in weakening the economies of countries in which they have large short interests. That's it. So she wrote, kids. The big guys are playing us like they always do, like they always have, and of course too many people are buying it, either going all Muslim Haiti and blowing shit up, excuse my language, or pretending that Paris is some new, rallying cry. Launching airstrikes on this Islamic State. People who have been Islamic for a long time usually aren't violent. It's the new recruits who go all cultish on this thing. It's funny because the anonymous group, declared war on ISIS. I want to ask you, how is an anonymous activist group on CNN? How'd that happen? As the warplanes pound ISIS targets and the U.S. Special Forces ramp up operations in Syria, the war against the terrorist group may be unfolding on another far more unconventional front. This hackers group, Anonymous, too, at war with ISIS. Why? Because they work with the same guys. They always have. You're not an activist and get on CNN. You don't. You don't. I'm sorry. Not gonna happen. So as children are being bombed all over this world, slaughtered really, what are we gonna do? And I realize the majority of you are not people who would go out and hurt someone or beat them up or burn down a church or synagogue or any of that stuff because you were told to. Because people are doing that because they were told to. There are trigger words. One of them, surprisingly enough, is pumpkin. So anyone who goes off in the next half hour, know that you've been triggered. Think I'm kidding? Humanitarian retribution? Really? More airstrikes hitting stadiums and museums and, I don't know, clinics? Does that help France? Does that help you? Regardless of what the targets are, if they are hit or not, airstrikes have no legal mandate. They are in violation of international law. But it looks like the world leaders are no longer listening. They don't care about international law. What we are seeing is what I told you you'd see. Now wait for the next couple of days, especially in the United States, because there's another raid going. Of course there were raids, and of course there were drills in Paris. There was one thing after another that absolutely pointed to false flag. Global manhunts, halting refugees. Why are we being shown the same picture over and over again and nobody's asking about that? Of course we're seeing the same faces. They use stock photos, guys. It doesn't mean that person was there. It means we've not seen the truth in a very, very long time. Most of, Swedish, US, Canadian pension funds are linked to Brazilian lab grabs, displacement of entire peoples. This is where we stand. Will we be for our people, or will we be against them? Do not let these lies change your heart. It's all we can do at this point, because globally our entire biosphere is crumbling. Volcanic upticks. Hundreds of marine animals washing up dead. Coast of Chile. The deaths of sea lions and dolphins. What do we have to see? A new trilateral Cold War, US, Russia, and China? And who just fired an unarmed missile, by the way? Oh yeah, United States. Wanted to show their badass by firing over their own people's heads? I'm not buying it. Red tides again, spreading all over this planet. What do we do? Are we going to sit here and worry? Will it make a difference? At this point, really, part of me thinks, so what? So what? Of course they're going to kill people. They want you to be upset so you won't notice what's happening in your own house. ISIS proven over and over again to be armed, of course, with their beautiful new Toyota trucks. That kills me. That absolutely kills me. And hearing the rhetoric, some people post on my page, but I will unfriend your butt. I hear that crap. I do. I'm not nice about it either. Just, you're gone. That's it. You disappeared. It happens once. Have we learned nothing? Because it's looking to me like we've learned nothing. Really. That's what it looks like to me. That nothing has been learned. Within hours of Paris attacks, sympathy, outrage. I guess that these people were the right color. Shh, let's whisper it. Everyone's, why aren't you posting about Paris? Because attacks in Baghdad happen every day. Taps into my frustration. Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Africa. And again, I don't want to trauma bash. If that hurt you, it's because you understand it. But the day before the Paris suicide attacks, I'll say attacks. Twin suicide bombers struck a southern Beirut suburb, killing at least 43 people. And on Friday, another one struck at a funeral in Iraq, killing another 21. Those attacks too claimed by ISIS. Reported by major media outlets, generated no interest or little outside the region. Where the turmoil of recent years has made such attacks seem like a regular occurrence, like those people don't matter. Our lakes in Canada are being turned into a toxic mine dump. All over Canada are beautiful lakes. Our Prime Minister has decided to increase the number of training troops in Iraq. Ground troops. So much for that. He may be pretty, but they were only holding him back for the right moment. Nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes are being found in children's lungs from doing what? Breathing in and out. But at least now some of Canada's muzzled scientists can speak. I've told you about real magic, how it's really used. They know, the ones really using this, they know 100% that if you do something bad, you must immediately do something good. this war on terror, this Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, we have been so duped. This is a hegemonic project under fake counterterrorism agenda, which consists in going after anything that threatens Western civilization. We've been told major military and covert intelligence operations are being undertaken simultaneously right now in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central Asia, and the Far East. Period. It's happening. The U.S. military agenda combines both major theater operations as well as covert actions geared against destabilizing sovereign states. Under this agenda, we will never see peace. So that's what I think about that. Join me Thursday. Maybe we'll do something fun. Let's, I don't know, talk about demons or something. Okay, thanks for listening. Love you guys. Bye for now. Oh, listener supported, please help me out so I can change my name to the thing so people won't have a hissy fit. Okay, bye.